Hello, everyone. My name is Maya, and this is the story of the night my husband walked out on our wedding, and the secret I found hidden inside his jacket 3 days later. I grew up in a coastal town where the sea was always gray, and everybody minded everybody else's business.
My family was ordinary.
My father repaired boats down at the harbor, and my mother cleaned rooms at the only hotel in town. We didn't have money, but we had each other. I lived with my parents, my older sister Clara, and my grandmother, who raised us on stories about love, real love. She always said, the kind that survives storms. I was 24 when I met Adrian. He wasn't from our town. He arrived one spring to manage the renovation of the old lighthouse, and he stayed. He was quiet, steady, the kind of man who fixed things without being asked. When he proposed after a year, standing on the pier with his hands shaking, I cried before I could say yes. But there was always one thing that bothered me. Adrian never talked about his past. Whenever I asked about his family, his face would close like a door. "There's nothing worth telling," he'd say. "My life started when I met you." I wanted to believe that was romantic. A part of me knew it was a warning. The weeks before the wedding were the happiest of my life. My mother sewed late into the nights. Clara argued with florists. My grandmother pressed her mother's ring into my palm and whispered, "Marriage is a long road, my girl. Walk it with your eyes open." I laughed then. I didn't understand what she meant. The wedding day was perfect. That's the cruelest part. How perfect it was. White ribbons on the church gate. My father's trembling arm as he walked me down the aisle. Adrian waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes, whispering, "You saved me," as I reached him. Everyone said they'd never seen a groom look at a bride that way. The reception stretched into the evening. Music, dancing, my grandmother waltzing with the mayor. And then, around 10 o'clock, I noticed something small. Adrian kept checking his phone. Not once, again and again, his jaw tightening each time. I told myself it was work. The lighthouse project had deadlines. I told myself a lot of things that night. At midnight, we finally drove to the little cottage we'd rented for our first week as husband and wife. I was exhausted and glowing. I carried my shoes in my hand and my whole future in my heart. We had barely stepped inside when his phone rang. He looked at the screen, and I watched the color drain from his face. "I have to take this," he said, and walked out onto the porch. Through the window, I saw him grip the railing with both hands, his head lowered, his whole body rigid. When he came back inside, he couldn't look at me.
"Maya, I'm sorry."
"There's an emergency. I have to go."
"Go."
I remember laughing because it didn't make sense. "Adrian, it's our wedding night." "I know." His voice cracked. "I know. I'll be back by morning. Please trust me." And then he was gone. The door closed, the engine faded down the road, and I stood in the middle of the room in my wedding dress, listening to the silence swallow everything. He didn't come back by morning. He didn't answer his phone. By noon the next day, I had called him 41 times. By evening, I drove to his mother's address, the one he'd given me once months ago, and found a boarded-up house with weeds in the yard. Nobody had lived there for years. I wish I could describe those days without my hands shaking. The whispers started immediately. In a small town, humiliation travels faster than the sea wind. He married her for her father's savings. He's done this before. Did you hear he was seen at the bus station with a suitcase? My father offered to drive to the police. My mother held me at night while I stared at the ceiling. Clara wanted to burn his clothes. Only my grandmother said nothing. She just watched me with those old, patient eyes. On the third day, I went back to the cottage to pack. His jacket was still hanging by the door, the one he'd worn at the reception. I don't know what made me check the pockets. Maybe instinct. Maybe desperation. Maybe the part of me that still refused to believe the man from the altar was a lie. Inside the inner pocket, I found a folded envelope. No stamp. My name written on it in Adrian's handwriting. And beneath it, a hospital visitor's badge, worn at the edges, renewed month after month for almost 2 years. St. Augustine's Hospital. Ward 7. Patient name, Samuel Whitaker. Relation, brother. Adrian had told me he had no family. He had told me he was an only child, that his parents were gone, that there was no one. I sat down on the floor of that cottage, right there in the hallway, and read the letter with my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my fingertips. Maya, it began. If you're reading this, then the day I feared has finally come, and I wasn't brave enough to tell you the truth while I still could. I have a brother. His name is Samuel. He's 3 years older than me, and he's been sick for a long time, a disease that is slowly taking his mind and his body. Our parents spent everything they had on his care before they died, and I made them a promise. I promised Samuel would never be alone. I didn't hide him because I was ashamed of him. I hid him because I was ashamed of myself. Every woman I ever loved left when they learned that my life would never fully be my own. When I met you, I was selfish. I wanted one thing in my life that belonged only to me. I told myself I would explain after the wedding, when we were safe, when you couldn't walk away. That was cowardly and I knew it, and I did it anyway. Tonight they called from the hospital. Samuel is dying. They're giving him days. I have to keep my promise. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to know that leaving that cottage was the hardest thing I have ever done, and the only thing harder would have been breaking my word to the one person who needed me before you did. Whatever you decide, you were the best thing that ever happened to me.
Adrian.
I read it 4 times. Then I sat in that hallway and cried, not the broken crying of the past 3 days, but something different. Anger and grief and understanding all tangled together.
He had lied to me.
That was real. But underneath the lie was not betrayal. Underneath the lie was a boy who had watched everyone leave and had loved me so much he built our whole future on fear. My grandmother's words came back to me. Walk it with your eyes open. I drove to St. Augustine's that same afternoon. Ward 7 was quiet, smelling of antiseptic and old flowers. And there, in a chair beside a narrow bed, sat my husband, unshaven, hollow-eyed, holding the hand of a thin man whose face was a faded copy of his own. Adrian looked up and saw me, and he didn't move. He just stared, like I was something he was afraid would vanish. Maya, he whispered. You shouldn't. How did you? I walked past him. I took Samuel's other hand, and I said, Hello, Samuel. I'm your sister. Samuel lived for 9 more days. I was there for all of them. I learned that he had been a teacher, that he loved crossword puzzles, that he had told Adrian years ago, Don't you dare ruin your life sitting beside mine. Adrian had never listened. That stubborn loyalty, the thing that had built the lie, was also the thing I had fallen in love with. That was the twist I never saw coming. His greatest flaw and his greatest virtue were the exact same thing. After Samuel passed, Adrian and I had the hardest conversation of our marriage, harder than any that came before. I told him the truth. You didn't protect me by hiding him. You robbed me. I would have loved Samuel. I would have sat in that chair beside you. You decided I was too weak to carry your life, and you were wrong. He wept. My steady, quiet husband wept like a child, and he said, I know. I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. And he has. It hasn't been a fairy tale. Trust, once cracked, heals slowly, like a bone strong again, but you always remember the break. We went to counseling. We made a rule that night in the hospital corridor. No more doors between us, no matter how ugly the room behind them. In 14 years of marriage, he has never broken it. Today, our daughter wears my grandmother's ring on a chain around her neck. And every year, on the anniversary of that night, Adrian and I drive to the sea and tell each other one hard truth we've been avoiding. Some years it stings. Every year it saves us. People ask me sometimes why I stayed. Why I didn't walk away from a man who lied about his entire family. And I always answer the same way. I didn't stay because the lie was small. I stayed because when I finally saw the whole truth, the fear, the promise, the dying brother, the selfish, terrified love, I saw a real person. Not a fairy tale groom. A real, flawed, loyal man who made one terrible choice out of fear and spent every day since making it right. Love is not the absence of secrets. Love is what you build after the secrets fall. It's 2 people standing in the rubble of the truth, looking at each other and choosing, eyes open, to stay. And to anyone listening who has been lied to by someone they love, only you can know whether what lies beneath the lie is poison or fear. But I beg you, before you decide, go and see for yourself. Walk it with your eyes open. Because sometimes, the man who left you on your wedding night is the same man who will never leave you again.